So we would have people over and there was nothing in our house. Nothing on the walls, nothing. For many of us, a fresh start happens when we have a reset in finances. And Lisa, you know, finances is a huge issue. And Jesus talks about it a lot in the Gospels. And if you look at it today, it's one of the top reasons for divorce.
Wow.
Because of people mishandling. And we have so many Americans in debt. It's so scary. And I remember when we were first married, Lisa, we just were like, well, we need this and we need this. And we were talking about furniture and chairs and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, we found our credit cards were run up to $10,000.
That's terrifying.
Just in a matter of a couple of years. And I remember that I started trying to think how I was going to pay all this off.
Right.
And it looked impossible.
Right.
I mean, because we were barely making enough money just to live. And I remember crying out to God one day. I said, God, if you get me out of debt, if you get us out of debt, I will treat our credit card like a checkbook. I will not charge anything unless I know I've got the funds in the bank to pay it off at the end of the month. And I made that deal with God. And you know, within months, He answered and we got out of that $10,000 debt. It was so miraculous. It was so beautiful. And so then
and I remember we joined hands and repented.
We did. We repented.
For grabbing things.
Right.
And then we said, we're going to give it all to you.
And so,
tore up a couple credit cards, if I remember right.
We did. We used the scissors and cut those babies up. We even had a little ceremony about it, right?
Yes, I remember that.
It was a lot of fun. But you know, I look at this and I realized the reason we got into that debt is we didn't have a budget. So I didn't watch anybody, I didn't listen to anybody, I just have an engineering mind and I'm good with money. So I just started creating a budget for us. And I said, okay, how am I going to do this? We only make $18,000 a year. And that's a low salary even back in the early 1980s. And I remember I thought, okay, this is what we'll do. I need all of this to pay our bills. And I always tithe first. And I said, I need this money to pay bills.
Wait, now let's talk about why would we always tithe first? Because a lot of people think, well, if I can't pay my bills, I shouldn't tithe. But
Correct.
We have discovered the faithfulness of God, that when you give God the 10%, He makes the other portion
90%
go further.
blessed. So we tithe 10%, we saved 10%, and then we lived off the 80. And that's the bare minimum you should do. And I remember, Lisa, we had to choose one time whether to tithe or buy groceries. I don't know if you remember this.
I do.
And we chose to tithe. And we cried in the car.
Yes.
And we just said, didn't understand why it wasn't working, but it was. And that week, a couple from out of town, didn't even know our financial situation, said, we don't know why, but they handed us a check for $200.
Yeah, and we were able to get groceries and gas, which was the two things we needed.
And we never lacked again. Never, ever did we lack again. So I remember in this time period, all of this was happening at the same time. I thought, okay, we've got to live on a budget. So I went through all of our bills, first of all, the tithe, then all of our bills and the savings, and then I had a little bit left over.
Yeah.
And so what I did is
we didn't do savings till we paid down our debt.
Right.
Right.
So I got these bank envelopes. Remember those zipper bank envelopes, right?
Yes,
and I put Lisa spending money, John spending money. I had miscellaneous.
Gas.
I had food.
Yeah.
And gas.
Yeah.
And so we had to live off of that. And it like John got, I think I got $50 a month and you got $50 a month for our personal spending.
Which was completely not fair because it costs women more money.
Yeah, that's true.
It does.
And you convinced me
Everything
that
does.
later, and we changed it later. But if I ran out of that $50 on the first 5 days of the month, then I had no spending money for the rest of the month.
We had to count the cost.
If we used all of our food money at the beginning of the month, we had no food money the rest of the month.
Well, sometimes we would borrow from miscellaneous.
So now we're having to make choices.
Yeah.
We're having to think, okay, do I want to not have food next week because I want to go out to eat now? But there's a lot of things that we believe we need that you really don't need.
Right.
And so our house, we made a choice because we miraculously, God gave us this little tiny house. We had no headboard. We had one little kitchen table, a couple dining room chairs, 2 love seats, and that's all that was in the house. So we would have people over and there was nothing in our house. Nothing on the walls, nothing, because...
the dining room was where the guys wrestled.
Yeah.
It was,
that was when they were little babies.
Yeah.
But we made the decision, if we didn't have the money in the bank, we weren't going to use the credit card. And so we would always just go, nope, we can't get this, we can't get this. And we started believing God, and miraculously, God filled up our house with furniture. So it's amazing how many times when it comes to finances, how you think, oh gosh, I gotta have this. I mean, my next door neighbor has that, and my friend has this and this, and you just start running up the credit cards. And let me just enlighten you. Are you ready for this? I'm gonna enlighten you.
It's terrifying.
If you have a $10,000 debt on your credit card, and you pay the $50 minimum payment. And I'm going to go low because some credit cards are as high as 28%. I'm going to go 15%. If you pay that minimum payment over 5 years, do you know what your interest will be? $9,643.09. You basically have paid 2 times whatever you bought. You had a $10,000 debt, or you spent $10,000 on your credit cards, but you have $19,000.
And that's factoring that they don't purchase anything else.
Yeah. So that's what you're going to give to the credit card company. If you get a home, listen to this, and you get a loan, a 30-year loan at 4.5%, at a $300,000 loan, you're going to end up spending $247,000 just in interest. You gave $247,000 to what you earned to somebody else. This is why Lisa and I always chose get a smaller house than what we can. We always live below our means because we had an aggressive plan to pay off that loan fast. My goal was to give as little to people in interest as possible. Why was that important? Because it allowed us to be generous. And the Bible says this. The Bible says that the world of the generous gets larger and larger, but the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. And
I want to say something, because there was a season where we couldn't give money, and I remember crying and being so sad because we couldn't give money. And God said, you know what you can give? You can give your clothes. You have a bunch of clothes, a bunch of maternity clothes that you're not wearing. I want you to give those away. Or other outfits that maybe when I lose weight, I'd be able to wear those, or gain weight. I'd be able to, as he said, get rid of them all. And you know, you have to have a generous spirit. And you know, John, we only had 1 car for a very long time. While all of our friends had 2 cars and huge credit card debts, we had 1 car, a Honda Civic, until we paid it off.
So here's the reset. Everything you think you need is not what you really need. So the reset is this. If you're in debt, believe God to get out of debt and pay it off as aggressively as possible. Secondly, don't use your credit card unless you fully intend to pay it off at the end of the month. It's been almost 35 years now, and I pay our credit card bill at the end of every month. I never allow it to go over. The other reset is this. Make sure you tithe. And don't tithe off your net, tithe off your gross, because God said, will a man rob me? We don't want to rob God. I'd rather rob the bank, although I'd never do that, than God. So make sure, because every person we've met in 37 years of ministry, if they tithe, all their needs are met. People that struggle that we meet financially are people that don't put God first. So make a reset with your finances, set a budget, tithe, and watch God bless your life.